Hi. Just sitting here thinking about teenagers, who are my favorite human beings, and wanting to share just a couple quick thoughts with folks who are parents and or educators or caregivers of teenagers and adolescents. In the hopes of giving, I guess, a little bit of insight into some of the struggles that I think can happen with regard to relationships with teenagers, between teenagers and adults. One of the things that kids this age are really designed to do is create their identity, right? To sort of figure out who they are as individual people. And that comes with a lot of experimenting, like I can remember experimenting with punk and girly girl and jock, different, identities when I was in middle school and high school. Mixing with different friend groups, and really that's their job, is to try on different things and see what fits and see what works. And I think that one of the things that makes it really difficult for people this age to continue to relate to adults in their lives is something that Bell Hooks talks about in her book All About Love, which is that if we want to belong to a particular group of people, which is really what human beings are designed to do biologically and physiologically, is to sort of have a tribe. That's predicated on having a shared reality. We have to have shared values. We have to believe many of the same really very basic foundational kinds of things in order to belong to a group. And sometimes we fake it because we want to belong to a group. But here's the thing. The very first group that most of us belong to is our family of origin, whatever that looks like. It could be if you're adopted, or if you've got a single parent, or if you're being raised by extended family, whatever that is, your family of origin, when you're a little kid, when you're a baby even, defines your sense of reality. And if you want to belong, which is really, if you want to survive, you have to belong, then you have to, on some level, accept that version of reality. And so if you are someone who was born into a male body, even if you don't feel male, if you have a family of origin that believes in a very strong gender binary world and looks at your body parts and says, no, you are male, and this is what you need to look like and how you need to act and what being male means, then if you want to belong to that family, on some level you have to accept that version of reality. And it's not just gender stuff, it's cultural, it is religious often. There are all sorts of shared realities that families have. And the challenge when kids get older and their job is to develop an identity is that they risk losing those ties because they don't have, or they don't want to have, that shared reality anymore. And that's really challenging for relationships. And I think the other thing that is important to understand is that when you have reached a certain age and you decide that you're not willing to accept that shared reality anymore, not only do you risk losing relationships that in the past have meant you belonged in the most elemental, fundamental survival kind of way, but all of the things that you've done up to that point, all of the things that people said to you about who you were, have to be somehow undone. So if you were told, most of your life that you are stupid and worthless, maybe because you have a learning difference, it's not simply a matter of getting to a certain age and saying, no, I don't accept that anymore. It is seeing, all the behaviors and the patterns that you have developed over the years in order to maintain those relationships and uphold that shared reality. So not only are you struggling to break free and hopefully find a new tribe to belong to, but those behavior patterns and thought patterns and beliefs about yourself and who you are still there. And they still need to be unpacked, and they still need to be challenged, and they're going to show up in strange and different ways, often in ways that we don't anticipate. And so I guess what I want adults who love and want to be in relationship with adolescents and teenagers and young adults to know is that's exhausting, and it can be traumatic work, unearthing and challenging all of those old stories that you have accepted in order to belong, trying to find a new way to belong, and really, facing that fear, that existential fear of maybe not belonging. That's exhausting, and it's overwhelming, and it's on top of school, social things with friends, extracurricular activities, part-time jobs, structural racism, misogyny, it's on top of all of the other things that young people this age have to deal with. And so the most important thing that we as adults can do is support young people as they do this work and ask them about their version of reality. What is real for them? What is true for them? And find ways to connect that feel foundational. It's also really important for us as adults to examine our own history with that. What are our triggers? Where Where do we maybe have foundational beliefs that we haven't examined that might be creating barriers to relationships with other people? I think it's possible to have our shared reality be unconditional, positive regard for each other instead of things like gender binaries or capitalism. I think it's really important for us to create relationships that are rooted in a sense of compassion for others, and in the primary goal being connection instead of adherence to some sort of external set of rules. Because again, it's literally their job to try on different identities, and so some things won't last, some things won't feel right to them as they try them on, and that's okay. But if we as the adults in their lives mock them or roll our eyes at them or tell them they're being ridiculous and they're not, what the identity they're trying on is not okay with us, then what we've done is we have given them more reason to fear that they don't belong. And that is really, really damaging to relationships. And what we need to be reminding young people this age is that they do belong regardless of, what identity they're trying on this week. And remember that it's exhausting. It's exhausting to try to undo years and years of messaging and conditioning. And while as parents especially, it might feel threatening to us to have our teenagers suddenly start rejecting our version of reality, it's important to remember that in the beginning, they may have only accepted that version of reality because they needed to in order to survive, or because they didn't know better. And they have a right to ask questions and be curious and think about what their version of reality is. And it's our job as parents and educators and people who care about young people this age to support them in their quest to understand, rather than to squash it and force them to continue accepting our version of what the world looks like. Okay, that's all.